We're doing Mystic Fix a little different this week. Because I have another fantastic guest in the same Bigfoot theme, we're going to axe the tarot section for just this week, and we'll continue it next week. But for now, we're going to be talking with anthropologist Dr. Jarret Ruminski. Jarret Ruminski, I want to welcome you to Mystic Fix. Dr. Jarret is a professional anthropologist and who works in consumer research today. He's Canada-based as a research consultant and writer with a PhD in U.S. history. So, Jarret, you and I are friends, and you shared with me an article called Man-Made, which was published in the Skeptic magazine, and it's about the Bigfoot culture and monster and and all of it. And you take, well, given the name of the magazine, you take a skeptical point of view of all of it. So let me just ask you first, what compelled you to write this, and what are your feelings about Bigfoot?
What compelled me to write this? This was a few years ago now, but I love Bigfoot. I have been fascinated by the topic since I first read about it in a library book as a kid back home in Ohio. And at first, reading about it, I was like intrigued at the possibility of this being a real animal. And in truth, I still am. But as I got older and I read a lot of skeptical literature about Bigfoot and just became familiar with the subculture of Bigfoot belief and the amount of uh, um, questionable individuals and claims in it, I sort of gravitated towards seeing Bigfoot as a cultural phenomenon, but that just made it more interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say though that my skepticism is simply based on materialistic ends. Like I want nothing more than to be proven wrong about Bigfoot's existence because I think it would be so cool if it was real.
Uh-huh. Right. Like I hear people say the same thing about aliens, or
Mhm.
or the supernatural, any kind of thing that's sort of out of our present day realm. Um, so why do you think the search for Bigfoot continues?
The search for Bigfoot is really a search for something that is deeply ingrained in all of us. In other words, that primal connection to the wild and the earth. And we as humans it's in our DNA to crave mystery, to try to understand the world around us. And one of the things I talked about in that article, which I think was in 2014, so it's been a while, but like the points I still stand by them is that we live in an increasingly interconnected, technologically based world in which mysteries just seem to vanish more every day, just like species are vanishing more every day. And so Bigfoot is sort of like this tangible, almost tangible connection to humanity's wild past, both in terms of our anthropological history back to our primate ancestors, but also it's a way of thinking about the world as still being wild, that there's still something out there that's just like us, but also different enough. It's like this connection to what we used to be. And humans have this innate need to, I think, try to reconnect with that wild, especially as we're getting further away from it. I mean, how many of us still experience nature on a daily basis? It's pretty rare now,
Or at all.
or at all in some cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just made me think. I used to teach in the community college, and I would go for a walk at lunch, and my kids who were city kids, urban kids, they would say, "Why you go outside, Miss Julia?" Like they didn't go outside. They didn't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have named so many different kinds of Bigfoots in this article. Beyond Bigfoot, beyond Sasquatch, beyond Yeti. They cross almost every culture. I mean, we've got them in Pakistan, Southeast Asia, Philippines, India, Brazil, Africa, Scotland, Siberia, Japan, Singapore. I stopped writing them after that because
Mhm.
there were so many. And so, are these all basically considered to be the same animal?
It depends on who you ask. Again, there are no experts on something that has no physical evidence of existence. So it's a lot of that depends on that. So in some cases, I think a lot of Bigfoot researchers tend to classify them differently. I think of like one of the most famous American researchers, Lauren Coleman, has classified different species of Bigfoot within the continental United States, let alone globally. So
Right.
a lot of it depends on who you talk to in a local culture,
Hmm.
uh, classifying it as different. But for me, what I see the sort of global dominance of the Sasquatch myth as sort of evidence of it being a cultural phenomenon rather than an animal. I mean, zoologically, it's fairly rare for a type of species to be distributed that globally, especially a large megafauna like Bigfoot would be. So, but what you do find across cultures and across time are wild man myths. I mean,
Hmm.
it is that is innate in humanity, and
Sure.
I think that makes more sense until evidence proves otherwise of Bigfoot being on a global scale.
Yeah, yeah. Rudyard Kipling and Mowgli in the Jungle Book, even, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It interested me when you mentioned you're from Ohio because my other guest, the Bigfoot expert Seth Breedlove, who's done a series of documentaries and had a Bigfoot sighting of his own, he's also from Ohio. So Ohio seems to be a hot spot for Bigfoot.
Yeah, first of all, I will say I adore Seth's work.
Okay.
I started listening to his podcast when he first started, and I am every year I contribute to the Small Town Monsters Patreon, not Patreon, but their Kickstarter projects because I love his
Oh,
work. It's
cool.
great,
Well,
and
you're
he
on the
actually,
same show.
yeah, he's amazing. I love his stuff, and we actually grew up not too far from each other. I'm from the Youngstown area.
Hmm.
But like Ohio has long been sort of like when I started reading about Bigfoot back years back, I remember reading that outside the pick of the Pacific Northwest, Ohio was considered the other Bigfoot hotspot. Like I remember growing up with stories of the Ohio Grassman and stuff. So like, yeah, that was cool.
Cool. Yeah. So you talk about Bigfooting, like the pursuit of Bigfoot as a subculture. Much in the way of, I'm thinking like tornado chasers or or ghost hunters. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So can you talk about who are these people who do these Bigfooting, investigations?
They're everybody. They're not limited to any kind of socioeconomic, ethnic background, gender background. They tend to be more male than female, but they're not limited to men. Um, they often are people who live in more rural parts of the US, for example, which makes sense. But they're not limited to that either. There are urban Bigfoot researchers, and they're really kind of a cross section of American culture. If we're talking about the U.S. in particular, there's a great book that came out in 2012. The names of the authors escape me, but it's called Paranormal America, and they include Bigfoot research in there, and they talk about how belief in the paranormal is not aberrant; it is mainstream. And so, Bigfoot researchers come from all walks of life that and they're not distinct or weird in that way at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Cool. And there are waves of Bigfoot sightings, correct? Like you
yeah.
talk about
Traditionally,
the
there
first
have
wave.
been.
Uh-huh. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Well, there was a in Bigfoot culture, sort of like within UFO research, culture. They tend to be referred to as flaps, sighting flaps. And I know like Small Town Monsters has based several of their movies on flaps, like the Missouri Momo Monster, which is a
Mm-hmm.
great local tale from I believe it was in um, the lower Mississippi River area there. And so and these flaps occur with time periods. So I consider like the first Bigfoot flap, but I'm not unique to this. This is others researchers have seen this too, but begins in the 1950s with the discovery by Jerry Crew of the footprints in California. And that began Bigfoot's career as a media personality. And so you had a bunch of flaps following those discoveries, sightings, which I think were built into the media ecosystem. It's in the same way that Loch Ness monster sightings began a flap after the 1930s King Kong film was shown because there was a very much Loch Ness monster looking dinosaur in that film. And lo and behold, people started seeing more Loch Ness monster sightings that looked just like that monster. So flaps occur when you have popular media exposure, but also they occur. I have a thesis, and it's light now because I've just been thinking about it for a while. That flaps occur in areas where you have socioeconomic upheaval, like job loss. A lot of the 1970s flaps in the American Midwest happened in dying industrial towns or around rural areas of dying industrial towns. So there seems to be some kind of connection there. So
Interesting.
yeah, and
You
then
think we're going to these myths and folklore and you just as a way to release some tension and stress or to have some hope in something else?
I think some people do. I don't think there's not a single reason for it, but that's
Uh-huh.
definitely a reason for some people. I always tell some others that like Bigfoot research requires a lot of belief. You have to believe that people saw what they saw. And it is not my imperative to question to say to somebody, you didn't see what you saw. That I don't want to do that. However, you do have to remember that people claim to see a lot of things that simply don't exist. That doesn't mean they didn't believe them. It doesn't mean they're trying to con you. The human
Right.
mind is a pretty complex thing, you know. So if I've often thought that some people, not all, but some people who do look for Bigfoot in the woods will find it because they're looking for it. And all you have to do is go on YouTube and look for a video of a guy who sees a shadow on a tree and through the magic of pareidolia describes it as a Bigfoot family and stuff like that.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Interesting. You mentioned Momo because I'm here in Missouri.
Mhm.
And as I think you know, I've done a lot of volunteer work with the Missouri Wildlife Rescue Center.
Mhm.
And we had Momo on sweatshirts for April Fools as our kind of, flagship animal that we were helping. If you saw an injured Momo on the road, we would we would come get it. But
One of my favorite Bigfoot stories ever is Momo.
really, and why is that? Tell me, because
It was
this is
what
a Missouri program. So,
Yeah, it was one of the first ones I ever read about back when I was a kid in a like some kind of Bigfoot compilation storybook. And it always stood out because the Momo Bigfoot is unlike other Bigfoot. It has those long spindly arms, the hair over its eyes, and it only I know sightings on some level seem to continue today, but it was concentrated in a very specific moment of time before it just sort of vanished. It's just a
mm.
really fascinating incident.
And it's in the Ozarks, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, where everything weird is in Missouri. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jarret Ruminski. If anybody wanted to reach out to you and talk about this some more, is there a way they could contact you?
I mean, I'm not on Twitter anymore, uh,
Right,
but I
right.
am
Got
on.
booted off.
Yeah, I am on Blue Sky, which is my new posting, and you can just email me. I have a website, That Devil History, which is a blog that is no longer active, but it's
Mhm.
still up, and it has my. You can email me and complain about me or whatever. What do you want to do? Like,
Okay, so thatdevilhistory.com, is
yeah,
that?
yeah.
All right,
And
all
it's a
right.
fair warning. It is a political blog, but it's not active anymore. So,
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jarret Ruminski. Appreciate your time. We'll catch you again sometime.
thank you.
Mystic Fix would not be possible without Camouflite. What is Camouflite? You really have to see it to understand. It is a practice with three layers to it. There's the foundational practice, where both partners engage in core like exercise, like yoga and dance, acquiring knowledge of the movements. The second layer is energy flow. The masculine foundation provides the strength and cultivates trust, and the feminine energy learns to let go and surrender, feeling safe and supported. In the third level of Camouflite, there's heightened pleasure and playfulness, unique twists and fun. Do you want to see it for yourself? Please visit Camouflite on Instagram. That's KAMAFLIGHT. They're getting ready for another workshop retreat at the Chosen Retreat Center in Sebastian, Florida. Check it out. Once again, KAMAFLIGHT.